Hey gang, welcome back. Better Call Sexton. I'm your host, James Sexton. Super excited to spend some time with you. We got a full docket today, but before we start, remember, hit subscribe, like, all those wonderful things so that you can get notified whenever new episodes come up. Today's docket, age gap dating. Is it problematic or is it the solution? Is marriage for the rich only, and are we seeing ringflation? We take a look at the cheating situation that could only happen in France, and of course, we take a look at your viewer submissions. Let's get after it.
So, James, from Psychology Today, in major age gap relationships, which partner is happier? It's now officially been stated in this study that men dating younger women are happier.
Was this that study that was conducted by the Center for Pointing Out Obvious Shit? Because I think I read it in the Journal of Pointing Out Obvious Shit. It was right under the article about teen drinking leads to people hooking up. That's what, it was right underneath that.
I think I saw that. Yeah, I think I saw that earlier.
Yeah, that's really, Do we really need a study for that to figure this out? Like, we needed a study to figure out that older guys dating younger women makes them happy? Like, that's sort of okay.
So what are we thinking about this? I mean, you obviously, it is a bit of survivor bias asking you what you've seen in your experience because you see only the divorces.
Right. Yeah. That's like asking someone who's an oncologist, it's like someone who's an oncologist saying like, dude, everybody I met today has cancer. It's like, right. Because you're an oncologist. Like if you were a cab driver, you'd meet a bunch of people that didn't have cancer today. Don't worry.
Well, a little stats here. We have all the volunteers who came in to speak about their relationships in this UK study were at least 7 years apart from one another. That's
so
the
European
minimum.
rule is 1/2 your age plus 7. That's the European rule, generally, is that when in an age gap relationship, it's 1/2 your age plus 7. Anything more than that age gap wise is considered indelicate. Anything less than that is fair game. That's the European rule.
So what do we think is causing this phenomenon? I mean, what is driving this?
I think that there are a lot of people who've talked about this. Dr. Orion Tarabin, Rolla Tomasi, Mike Sartain, a lot of very smart guys who spent a lot of time looking at the currency of relationships and talking about what it is. But look, you don't even need a weatherman to know which way the wind blows. I think that older men tend to have different levels of economic security, different levels of maturity. There is a long-held belief that women mature faster than men. So I do think there are a lot of men who it takes some years for them to catch up to women close to their own age. So there could be a maturity gap that's happening there. I think it's just different characteristics. I work with and have a lot of young men who work for me in their 20s, in their 30s, in their 40s. I'm in my 50s. And you look at each age and stage of a man's life, and hopefully they're always growing and changing throughout their life. Women, the same thing. But I think what the currency and the economy of dating we find appealing about people, men tend to value beauty quite a bit. They tend to value, a beautiful younger woman. And again, not all men, not all younger women or older women, but this is a trend that anyone who denies it is kidding themselves. And women tend to like financial security, stability, maturity, and emotional vocabulary. I think a lot of men don't really develop into a full version of ourselves with an emotional vocabulary until we reach a certain later age. Maybe at that point, a guy's had some therapy, he's got some economic stability. I think me in my 20s versus me in my 30s or 40s, there's no comparison as to who would be a better partner and a better spouse potentially. I think in my 30s and my 40s, much better choice than in my 20s. My 20s, you're caught up in all the things that a young person's caught up in. Your prefrontal cortex in a man isn't even fully developed until you're 23, 24. So I don't find this that shocking. I think what men select for and what women select for in the value economy of relationships is very different. But again, there have been some brilliant, people talked about this and talked about it in great depth. And the three that I named are three great examples. But I don't think there's anything wrong with calling that out. I think people understand it. And I think that you see a lot of it out there. I don't see a ton of it in my office, which tells me that those relationships may not end up in a divorce lawyer's office, either because they didn't marry or because if they marry, that it works out successfully. So I anytime I don't see a certain combination in my office that often, it tells me something. Because again, everything I'm saying is not based on my rote speculation. It's based on my interpretation of indisputable data and demonstrable facts of what I've seen in 25 years as a divorce lawyer and the people sitting across from me and the people that I represent. So, I don't see a lot of slightly older, again, difference between a 50-year-old guy dating a 20-something-year-old girl. I think that's very different. You're at totally different stages of your life. But, when you see someone who's in their late 40s dating someone who's in their early 30s, that's a significant age gap, but it really doesn't mean that much. Age, as you get further along, I think most people would agree, is not that profound of a change. My birthday's next week. I'm turning 53. It's not really any different than being 52. Being 49 and being 53 isn't that big of a difference. Maybe my hair's a little grayer or my back hurts a little more. But if you look at a freshman in high school and a senior in high school, it's like a different species. Like a freshman in high school is a child and they look like a child, and a senior in high school starting to look like an adult. They're not quite an adult, but they're starting to look like an adult. They have some adult characteristics about them. They can drive. They usually have a job. Like it's a very different creature. So at those younger ages, each year brings a huge succession of change. It was one of the things that was fascinating about watching you and your brother grow up, was seeing how much each year you changed, and the child who you had sort of goes away and then is replaced by this new child with all kinds of different characteristics. So I think that once you pass a certain age, these age gap concepts aren't as important. And what really is changing in the dynamic is economic security, stability, maturity, life experience, worldliness, beauty. Those are all different things that are more tied to age. And I'm not surprised to hear that someone's actually done a study on that.
So it's actually funny you say all that, because from the New York Post, slightly related, is Gen Z women are choosing older men over guys their own age. So we're seeing, I guess, the sort of complementary inverse of this. And actually, funny, I don't know if you saw one of the quotes from this article went a little viral over on X and on TikTok. I don't know if you saw this. According to 19-year-old Lisa, who was dating someone in his late 20s and sat down with the outlet, "I'd go on the odd date with someone my age, and more often than not, it would end up in a straight-up argument when he started saying Andrew Tate made good points. Now that I'm dating an older man."
An older man's like, who the hell's Andrew Tate? Yeah.
He missed all the manosphere stuff at its shows. People find it funny because that's kind of one of Andrew Tate's points, isn't it? That women are going to go for an older, more established guy.
And Andrew Tate's not as young as he used to be. Look, I've never been a 19-year-old girl, so I put that caveat right out there. I've been a 19-year-old boy, so I'm qualified to talk about that, and I helped raise two, at one point, 19-year-old boys. I can't imagine wanting to date one of them. Like it's a very weird feral creature to some degree. If you're a 19-year-old girl and your option is to date a 19-year-old boy or to date a guy who's in his 20s, I don't think it's that shocking that they make the choice that they make, because the guy in his 20s is going to be a little more stable, a little more mature. He's going to be a little more worldly. He's going to have a little more experience under his belt, and may have a little more confidence or actual confidence, not false confidence. And yeah, I can imagine. I don't have young enough kids anymore I'm that tied into this, but I can imagine that with some of the material that's out there now for young men and young women, that we don't have some very misguided young people right now about what their expectation should be of a partner and how they should regard a partner. I think that there is a lot of very toxic stuff out there for young men and for young women. And some of it has some real nuggets of truth in it. But it's kind of like a shit sandwich. Like it's like garbage, couple of nuggets of truth, and then more garbage. And, I grew up very Catholic, as you know. And if you notice in the Bible, the devil never lies. He just tells part of the truth. And so that's kind of what happens with a lot of these sort of internet gender guru people, whether it's women or men, girl bossing or red pill stuff. And again, I'm not pillorying the red pill. There's a lot of people in what you call the red pill space I have a lot of respect for. There's a lot of people in the girl boss space that I have respect for. But everything has its extremes. And if you look at the extremes of both of those worlds, they have some little bits of wisdom wisdom in there, but they have a lot of stuff in there that is, I think, really, really fascinating, but toxic and really bad for the future of relationships and for men and women in their interaction with each other. So I think you got to be real careful who you take advice from. Everybody has an opinion, but not all opinions are created equal. And I think it makes a lot of sense to be careful and thoughtful about whose advice you take, including mine.
Well, I'm glad you're not involved in either of your kids' dating lives.
I don't want to be involved in your dating life.
Life.
I don't want to even know. I don't even.
Well, you technically pay for it because you write my paychecks, but
that's true. That's true, and I hope you spend it wisely. I hope that you're doing
well
and you're enjoying the single life, because you should certainly enjoy the single life. It's you should be young and single is a wonderful opportunity. The road is wide open, and you should be enjoying it.
That's actually very positive. I should have that outlook. That's a very positive way to look at it. I like that.
You should.
I'm gonna go with that today. But
I've always said that there is no right or wrong way necessarily to live your life. There's just one set of problems versus another set of problems. When you're in a relationship, you have one set of problems, but you don't have another set of problems. When you're single, you have one set of problems, but you don't have another set of problems. So really what you have to do is just pick the set of problems that you're most comfortable with. There was a line from a Paddy Chayefsky play that I opened my book with, which is a character is talking to his friend about his girlfriend, and he says, she says she loves me. What I think she means by that is that she prefers the senseless misery we inflict on each other to the senseless misery we would feel if we were alone. And I think to some degree, it's a very pessimistic way of saying what I just said, which is that you have one set of problems, but not another when you're single, and the same thing when you're in a relationship. So you have to pick the set of issues or problems and the set of value that you want to have. And neither of those is a superior way of being. They're just different.
So we have here from the Wall Street Journal.
Wall Street Journal. It's behind a paywall, though, probably. That's the problem with the Wall Street Journal.
Well, luckily, the show's been doing well. The budget's been approved. We can afford the $1 subscription.
Hit that like button. Thank you.
So the AdSense money came in. We can afford the Wall Street Journal.
Guy is choking me. Yeah.
I know. So we got it, folks. But people have been talking about this ringflation, the ring session, whatever you want to call it. Wall Street Journal asks, why marriage is increasingly for the affluent. The economic contract of marriage has shifted, and now young people are looking for financial stability before the wedding. What do we think about this kind of shift where rather than saying we're going to get married and then build a life together, we're going to try to build up some of that life and then get married?
We're going back to like a dowry system here where it's like, or like the other way where it's going to be like, if you want my daughter, you've got to give me 18 goats and you've got to give me like some silver. Like this is yeah, look, I certainly get it. I think that if part of the economy of marriage is a man being a provider, I think there's nothing wrong with what we call in the law an offer of proof. And an offer of proof is when you give some indication through demonstrable evidence that what you are seeking to introduce is relevant. So if I say, Your Honor, I'm going to be bringing in testimony over the fact that this document is an accurate copy of the document, then you have to have some offer of proof. You can show it to the court or let opposing counsel see it so that they can say, okay, yes, this is in fact what you're purporting it's going to be. So, I think that's what this is basically an offer of proof, just saying, look, if you're a good provider, provide. Let me see you do it. Don't tell me what you're going to do. Go ahead and do it. So, again, do I think that rings, wildly expensive engagement rings, is a good idea? Generally, no. I think that I've actually observed in my professional practice that the bigger the ring, the more expensive the divorce, partly because people have more assets when they buy these very big rings, but also partly because I just don't know that that's the best way to start off a relationship, especially if you put yourself into debt for it. I recently did a divorce for a young man who had put himself in $75,000 worth of debt buying an engagement ring. If you got 75 grand laying around and you still have enough money for a down payment on a home or to pay off student loans or things like that, it seems to be a more dramatic gesture to help pay off her student loans than to buy her a rock that was artificially inflated in terms of its value, or buy like a lab-grown diamond that looks huge. No one's going to be able to tell. They're not going to be like coming in with like a spectrometer, looking at it. So I just think some of this is very performative, but some of it is, look, the idea of an engagement ring is in and of itself kind of a statement about value. Like, show me how much you love me by buying me an expensive piece of jewelry. There are a lot of other ways to demonstrate that you genuinely love somebody than buying them a rock. But I understand the idea is invest something in this relationship and show me that you believe I have some financial value by giving me a very expensive gift. Again, we arbitrarily picked a ring. I mean, it could be like, hey, buy me a Ferrari if you really love me, or buy me a Honda Civic if you really love me.
Don't give them ideas.
I mean, listen, if you're going to spend the money on the ring, you might as well buy them something that's more useful than that, and then buy a CZ or a lab grown diamond for, a tenth of the cost. But, again, this is all matters of personal preference and the fun mating rituals that I call job security.
So it's bringing up these questions, though, about this kind of redefinition of marriage, this sort of new age attitude on it that it seems like before in previous generations, marriage was you're a young guy, you're a young girl, you get married, you build the life together.
Yes.
Now it's seeming like people are maybe coming to it at a more of a contractual standpoint, maybe a bigger standpoint of, okay, we're going to look at it like, let me get set up first.
Yeah, I think this is actually part of a larger trend in our society, and that is that we've spent so much time coveting our neighbor's goods. Like, we spend so much time looking at aspirational lifestyle stuff on social media that we really have a skewed sense of what you're supposed to have accomplished by certain ages. When I first got out of college, like the idea that someone like a Jack Doherty, who's like worth hundreds of millions of dollars for just being a goofball on live streaming, like that, the idea that people would make colossal amounts of money at a very young age, late teens, early 20s, and have the ability to buy supercars. Like, usually all the guys who had a lot of money were almost too old to have a good time with it because they'd had to invest. And so, of course, if you were looking to date someone, you would date them when they were on the come up, and there was sort of a mutual investment that was happening. It wasn't, okay, let me wait around until I meet a guy who can take me to Bali and Dubai and fly private. And again, if a woman is beautiful enough, she's probably going to have lots of men who have lots of money, who are willing to take her on vacation and take her to amazing places. And then the question becomes like, okay, do you want to be with a guy who right now can take you to amazing vacations and places, but who's probably not serious in going to marry you in any way or want to have children with you? Or do you want to date a guy who's very likely to be serious about you and potentially marry you and have children with you, but you're going to have to wait around to be able to, if ever, go on lavish vacations and, have very expensive bags and things like that? It's really about an economy. And again, that's not a dirty word. An economy is an exchange of value. And I think a young, beautiful woman, her stock is very high. Her future isn't ahead of her. But a man, they're on the come up at that point. So I think that, it's not a secret, and it's not saying anything radical to say that I understand it from both sides of the equation. But which do I think is a better investment long term? I think a better investment long-term is to find someone who has real potential, who's a hard worker, who's disciplined, who demonstrates to you in the relationship that they're invested in you and interested in you. Will that investment always pay off? No. I do a lot of divorces of women who date a guy when he's in law school or med school or his surgical residency, or who's kind of, making his way through the Wall Street, like food hierarchy, and she sticks with him all the way through. And then when he makes partner and he makes lots of money, or he finishes his residency and now he's a surgeon and his earnings go from $70,000 a year to $2 million a year, he leaves and he grabs a younger girl, or he starts sleeping with a nurse, or, this is what sometimes happens. So again, investments sometimes pay off big, investments sometimes pay off very poorly, and you lose your investment and you can't get those years back. And it leads to a lot of hurt feelings. So invest carefully and invest wisely. That's all I can say to anybody.
So, James, former Nestle CEO Laurent Frigé. Very, very French
Sounds
name.
like a candy. Would you like a Laurent Frigé? No, I'm stuffed.
Well, the story's not too sweet. Former Nestle CEO was fired after a senior executive said to be his official mistress allegedly caught him in Zurich.
As opposed to his unofficial mistress.
Well, allegedly caught him in Zurich with another subordinate, his secret mistress.
Dare you cheat on your mistress with your different mistress? That is terrible.
Talking
what kind of
French
man
story,
are you?
Huh? It's a very...
It sounds exhausting, by the way. Like, how do you run in a company and you got a wife and you got a girlfriend and then you got a girlfriend on the girlfriend? Like, that's
And it wasn't the wife that reported this.
Maybe I'm old, but that sounds exhausting.
It was the mistress that went and reported this.
Which, the official mistress
the
or the
official
partial mistress? So the middle mistress reported it to whom?
To the company.
To the company.
Because both were workers at the company. So the secret mistress is a subordinate. One level above her, a senior executive is a mistress.
I mean, these things
and then he's the CEO.
These things get complicated. They really do. You know, here's what I'll tell you. I mean, there is something to be said for workplace efficiency. The fact that he found, you know, mistresses at work. It's like, listen, you know, this is a busy guy. He doesn't have time to be going around trying to find. He's like, oh, listen, what do we have here? Who do we have in HR? Are you? You're good. Let's go. You know, and you're the backup. You know, and his delegating is really what you want in a chief executive officer. But yeah, look, in all seriousness, I mean, you know, that's the you lay down with dogs, you come up with fleas. I mean, I don't know that she can get all that righteously indignant about things. So she's like, I can't believe you're a cheater. You kind of wouldn't know him if he wasn't. But yeah, I mean, I'd still hurt feelings. It's still people. It's still people trying to figure it out. So I get it. People do irrational things when they're angry. And so it sounds like her like blowing his situation up probably was because she was angry. And I have a PhD in watching people do irrational things that are often against their self-interest because they're angry. And, you know, I wish I could tell my clients, don't be human for this little while we're going through a divorce, but people are human all the time. So it is something that, but I tend to favor the belief that, you know, if you're going to go for revenge, start by digging two graves because it ultimately blows up in your face a lot of the time. I had to counsel a client today, actually, who her soon-to-be ex-husband, who she's having a very ugly divorce with, is dating a woman who is married. And she's like, I want to call this guy's wife and tell her. And I said, look, you're injecting yourself into a quarrel that serves no purpose but to blow his life up. And he's the father of your kids. This is not going to work out. There's no profit in this for you other than like this temporary hit of like, yeah, I got him, which again, the value of that, particularly when you have kids with somebody, is probably not worth it. You know, it's like reaching into hot coals to throw them at the other person. You may or may not hit them, but you're going to burn the shit out of yourself.
It's people are sort of lauding and laughing at all this structural cheating here, where it's basically the mistress, like in their culture, I suppose, they've got an official mistress is okay. It's the secondary one
Europeans,
that's the problem.
Man, they got it. You know what I mean? The French know how to live. You know, I get it. Look, it is kind of funny, like from the outside to look at that and be like, he's cheating on his mistress with a different mistress, you know? And meanwhile, the wife's probably like at home, like perfectly like, yeah, good. Get these, like just delegate, like go ahead, like run around like a because who looks like the jackass in this situation? Him, you know? I don't think she's like, all right, listen, just go figure your crap out, you know? So I don't know what to say except that there's lots of different relationship permutations, and you know,
is there something to be said for the Tony Soprano method of having the wife,
having the gourmand,
but then you got the gourmands? Is there something to be said about that?
Well, I mean, that's not new. You know, that's part of lots of different cultures, and that's something people have been officially or unofficially doing for a long time. I mean, I always joke that God gave us 10 commandments in theory, and the only thing he repeated was don't cheat, basically. Don't commit adultery and don't covet your neighbor's wife. So I think this has been a problem for a real long time, if you want to call it a problem. It's been a part of being human for a really long time. So there's a chapter in my book called Go Without or Go Elsewhere. And it basically says when you're not having your needs met in a relationship, if you don't figure out a way to communicate about it and meet each other's needs, you're presented with one of two options: go without, which no one likes to do, or go elsewhere, which carries its own attendant risks and problems. So I think the solution to this is actually to like try to maintain your connection to your partner so that neither of you feels compelled to cheat, except perhaps in like some whimsical passing way of like, oh, that'd be nice. Just like seeing something that you go, oh, that'd be nice if I was, you know, just because you're on a diet doesn't mean you can't look at the menu, but you don't want to start tasting things. And that I think is probably, most people would agree, the ideal permutation is to be so satisfied in your singular relationship, your monogamous relationship, that you don't cheat because you don't want to cheat. You know, that would be the ideal situation. I don't know that the rule of being married is what prevents people from cheating. I think that history has demonstrated that that's not the case. I'd be out of a job if people didn't cheat. People cheat constantly. But is the cheating the problem, or is the cheating a symptom of the problem of disconnection? I tend to think it's the latter, that happy people tend to not cheat. People who are in satisfying relationships don't cheat. The problem is they very often don't tell their partner that they're not satisfied in the relationship in a meaningful way or in a way that's actually going to accomplish anything other than making the other person defensive. So we need to get better at that, which is why I talk a lot about it in my book.
So going off of that, we're obviously here in the Northeast. You operate in Manhattan, little slice of all the world's flavors over there. So you've seen a lot of different cultures in the office. You've seen a lot of different, we're talking about the gumas, talking about the mistresses. Have you had experiences with anybody coming from, maybe they're Italian, maybe they're whatever, where there is a kind of acceptable
You're trying to
cheating
get me canceled
culture
here. Yeah. No, I think every culture has some form of this. I had, because I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I used to go to Brazil a lot, and Brazil has legal brothels. And the joke is they would refer to it as my cousin's house. So they would say like, oh, when I get out of work today, I have to stop by my cousin's house before I go home. And that was like the term for it locally, is I'm going to my cousin's house. And it was, men would go in. It was basically like going into a strip club, except you get to pick one of the women and or two and go off into, whatever it is that you guys want to do. And there's, this is sanctioned by the government. You're not allowed to pander people. You're not allowed to pimp people. You're not allowed to make money off of someone else's sex work. But sex workers have to go through a mandatory training. They have to learn about contraception and other things, and they're essentially licensed. But, every culture has some variant of something like this. Some are above board, like that Brazilian one, and some are, and I'd imagine, again, it's very difficult to track statistics on these things. But when you have things like legalized sex work that is regulated in some fashion and kind of culturally accepted as part of the culture, I'd be interested to see if that cut down on the infidelity rates in a significant way. Because if a person has an outlet for that kind of a thing, if they've reached the point in their relationship where, they have a deep bond and love each other, but the physical connection just isn't there, or sexuality is just not important to their partner anymore, if this is an outlet for that, I don't know, like the line of what is cheating and when should a person not cheat and when should a person feel very guilty about cheating. If looking at pornography and masturbating is a form of cheating, well, how much worse is it if you are looking at a live person while you're doing it on like a live cam? Okay, well, now what if it's at a club or someplace where a person's allowed? Okay, so it starts to get into these, we think in generalities, but the law lives in details. And I guess the question just becomes like, what is the morality that we want to impose on people? I think we can agree that, infidelity is something that has been around a really, really, really long time in almost every culture, if not every culture. I jokingly say that, infidelity probably was invented 5 to 10 minutes after monogamy was invented. So it really is a question of like, how are we getting any better at this, or are we just getting worse at it? The view from my chair in my office is we're not getting any better at it. We're probably getting worse at it. But, again, that's just my skewed view of my selective sample of people that are in a divorce lawyer's office. So I don't know that that's completely accurate. All right, viewer submission time, guys. Remember, this is go to sextonshow.com. You can send us love mail, hate mail. You can send us suggestions for the show, or you can send us questions. And if it's interesting enough, I will certainly answer it. Here we go. Will Kanye be included in Travis and Taylor's wedding and or prenup? I am going to heartily say no. I think that Kanye has officially extricated himself from polite society in the fullest way. I don't think Taylor was a fan to begin with after the stunt he pulled and the stuff that he put on his album about her. And at this point, I think that Kanye is kind of a persona non grata for the entire universe, except maybe a very dark corner of the internet. So I think Kanye's successful immolation of his entire life and reputation is essentially done. It's a shame. He was a good musician, and it's always sad to see someone who's clearly dealing with mental health issues go completely off the rails like that. But I think Taylor and Travis are going to go off and live happily ever after, and Kanye just going to keep being Kanye. All right, it's time for a Sexton-ism. Sexton-isms are things I say so often on the telephone that my staff writes them down because they hear me saying them so frequently. It's just because they're the lines that either get a laugh or make someone angry in an effective way, or they give clients some solace. So they've been writing them down, and now I'm sharing them all with you. This one is, I frequently tell adversaries, if you stop telling people lies about me, I'll stop telling people the truth about you. I actually don't even know where I got that from, but you'll often have people in my profession will badmouth each other, again, I tend to not say anything negative about opposing counsel in cases or any of my colleagues. If I have nothing nice to say, I'll say some very benign thing like, oh, they have a lovely speaking voice. But one of the ways that people try to like get clients is by, souring them on other attorneys. So whenever I hear that someone has done that, I tend to be very upfront about the fact that I heard what they'd said. And I'll usually say, if you stop telling people lies about me, I'll stop telling them the truth about you. That'll do it for today's Better Call Sexton. Thanks for spending some time with us. Again, remember, sextonshow.com for your submissions. Hit like, subscribe, all those wonderful things. It helps the channel. We are adjourned.